There is a metal that kills mosquitoes on contact, not with poison, not with chemicals, but through a process so ancient that the Egyptian pharaohs used it to purify their drinking water 4,000 years ago. Scientists have proven it destroys 99.4% of disease-carrying insects in standing water, and the United States Environmental Protection Agency has registered it as the only solid surface material on Earth that kills bacteria threatening human health. A single 5-euro-cent coin placed in a container of water causes 100% mortality in every tested mosquito species within 14 days, at concentrations far below what the World Health Organization considers safe for drinking water. The ancient Egyptians stored water in vessels made from this material as early as 2200 years before Christ, and the oldest surviving medical text on Earth, the Smith Papyrus, describes its use for sterilizing wounds and purifying water. Ayurvedic healers in India prescribed drinking water stored in vessels made from this metal for centuries before modern medicine even existed, calling it tamra jal and claiming it balanced the body and destroyed disease. In 1865, a French physician proved that workers who handled this metal every day survived a cholera epidemic at 7 times the rate of everyone else in Paris, examining data on over 200,000 people across 4 countries. This material is copper, and it has been protecting humans from insects, bacteria, viruses, and disease since the Bronze Age. Then the chemical industry happened, and a $5.5 billion market was built on making you forget what your ancestors already knew. They did not stop using copper because it failed. They stopped because it worked too well and could not be packaged into a spray can that empties every 2 weeks. A $3 wire that repels insects indefinitely cannot generate recurring revenue, and what cannot generate recurring revenue cannot sustain a $5.5 billion industry. This is the story of the oldest insect repellent on Earth, the science that proves it works, and why the chemical industry buried it under a mountain of DEET. Welcome to Forbidden Camping, and before we open this vault, if these stories matter to you, the best way to preserve this knowledge is simple. Subscribe, hit the bell, and share this with someone who camps, hikes, or simply hates being eaten alive by mosquitoes because every share keeps alive what they tried to erase. Now let me take you back to 1852, to Paris, France, where a young physician named Victor Burq is about to stumble onto something that will terrify the chemical industry for the next century and a half. Cholera is devouring Paris. People are dying in the streets. Entire neighborhoods are being quarantined. And the city is gripped by the kind of terror that only a plague can produce. Burq walks into a copper smelting factory on the outskirts of the city, and inside those walls, something impossible is happening. 200 workers handle molten copper every single day. Their hands are permanently stained green from copper oxide, their clothes reek of metal dust, and their lungs are filled with copper particles. And not a single one of them has cholera. Not one. In a city where thousands are dropping dead in the very same neighborhoods where these workers live and sleep and eat. Burq is stunned, and he begins the most obsessive investigation of his career. Visiting over 400 businesses and factories across Paris, every single one that works with copper. Jewelers, goldsmiths, boiler makers, bronze sculptors, brass instrument makers, all of them tell the same impossible story. Cholera is killing their neighbors, but sparing them entirely. He checks the military records and discovers that musicians who play brass instruments, trumpets, trombones, French horns, all made with copper alloys, are surviving at rates that defy every statistical model available. 400 to 500 copper workers living in the same disease-ravaged district had all been completely spared from cholera, while their neighbors perished around them. Then, the 1865 epidemic hits Paris with full force, and the numbers become absolutely undeniable. 6,176 people die of cholera out of a total population of 1,677,000, which is 3.7 deaths per every 1,000 people. But of the 30,000 Parisians who work in copper industries, only 45 die, which is 0.5 per 1,000, 7 times lower than the general population. Burq does not stop at Paris. He collects data on more than 200,000 people across England, Sweden, Russia, and France, and the pattern is identical. Everywhere copper workers survive epidemics that kill everyone around them. In 1867, he presents his extraordinary findings to the French Academies of Science and Medicine, and his conclusion is devastating and precise. Copper, applied to the skin, is an effective means of prevention, which should not be neglected, he declares, backed by the largest dataset any physician had ever assembled on the relationship between a metal and human survival. The academies listen, they acknowledge the data, they validate his research, and then something revealing happens. The world quietly moves on because there is no profit in a metal you buy once and keep forever. But 26 years later, in 1893, a Swiss botanist named Carl Nägeli discovers something that explains everything Burq observed. He calls it the oligodynamic effect. From the Greek words oligos meaning few and dynamis meaning power, the power of small things, the ability of tiny amounts of heavy metals to destroy living organisms at concentrations so low they are barely detectable. Nägeli proves that copper ions kill bacteria, fungi, viruses, algae, spores, and a vast range of microorganisms on contact, not in hours, not in days, on contact simply by existing as a surface. The copper does not need electricity, does not need heat, does not need sunlight, does not need activation of any kind. It simply releases ions from its surface, and everything microscopic that touches it dies. This was not new to ancient civilizations. Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, used copper to treat infections in Greece. Roman engineers built copper, piping into their aqueducts to deliver purified water to an entire empire. And centuries later, NASA used copper-silver purification systems to provide clean drinking water to astronauts in space, eliminating the need for chlorine entirely. But here is where the story turns from fascinating to infuriating. Stay with me, because the science behind what copper does to insects is as elegant as it is devastating for a $5.5 billion industry. Here is what happens at the molecular level when a mosquito larva, a bacterium, or a virus makes contact with a copper surface. The copper releases positively charged particles called cupric ions from its surface, and these ions immediately penetrate the cell membrane of the organism through a process scientists describe as lipid peroxidation, essentially punching chemical holes through the protective wall of the cell. Once inside, these copper ions generate what researchers call reactive oxygen species, a chemical firestorm at the molecular level that tears the organism apart from within. The ions destroy the three-dimensional structure of the proteins that the cell needs to function. They shatter the DNA so the organism cannot reproduce or repair itself, and they cause the cell membrane to leak until the contents drain out completely. The cell does not just die, it implodes, and this process happens on every copper surface, every time, without exception, without expiration, and without any external energy source whatsoever. Researchers at the University of Southampton in the United Kingdom tested this against E. coli bacteria and found that on stainless steel surfaces, E. coli survives for 34 days, while on copper it is completely eradicated in just 4 hours at room temperature with zero human intervention. Bacteria can live on plastic for weeks, on chrome for months, on aluminum indefinitely, but on copper they are dead in hours, and no bacterium in the history of recorded science has ever developed resistance to the oligodynamic effect. Now here is where the insect data becomes absolutely devastating for the repellent industry. A landmark study published in the journal Parasites and Vectors tested metallic copper against mosquito larvae, including Aedes aegypti, the species that carries dengue, Zika, chikungunya and yellow fever, and Culex pipiens, the common house mosquito that ruins every camping trip. Dosages of less than 500 parts per billion of dissolved copper in standing water, far below the World Health Organization limit for safe drinking water, caused 100% mortality in all tested mosquito species within 14 days. Not 90%, not 95%, 100%. Every single larva died. And when researchers coated containers with metallic copper spray, the field reduction rate was 99.4% for approximately 3 months. A separate study published in PLOS One confirmed copper is effective as a mosquito larvicide at concentrations below 2 parts per million, which is the threshold the World Health Organization considers safe for human drinking water. Copper kills every mosquito larva in the water at levels that are literally safe enough for you to drink. Let that sink in for a moment. A study from the Selly Oak Hospital in the United Kingdom found copper surfaces were 90% more effective at killing bacteria compared to plastic, chrome-plated, and aluminum surfaces in hospital settings. And here is the fact that should terrify every insect repellent corporation on Earth. The EPA, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, has officially registered copper as the only solid surface material proven to kill bacteria threatening human health, not silver, not titanium, not any synthetic polymer ever invented, just copper. A material that costs $3 at your local hardware store and has existed since the beginning of human civilization. I need to be honest with you about something, because this channel does not sell you certainty where nuance exists. The published research on copper-destroying mosquito larvae in standing water is overwhelming and bulletproof. 100% mortality across multiple species in controlled peer-reviewed studies. The evidence for copper ions repelling adult flying insects from an open-air campsite combines proven antimicrobial mechanisms with traditional knowledge spanning 4,000 years and practical field reports from campers around the world. It is compelling but less rigorously tested in controlled journals for that specific open-air application. That honesty matters because when I tell you the next 4 facts are backed by indisputable peer-reviewed data, you can trust them completely. Before we continue, I compiled every study, every technique, and every historical source from this video into a complete document with the step-by-step copper campsite protection system, exact materials and prices, and all scientific references you can verify yourself. The link is in the description. Now, back to what the insect repellent industry absolutely does not want you to know. If you have made it this far, you already know more about copper and insects than 99% of campers alive today. Subscribe so you do not miss the next vault we open. Now, here is where this story turns dark. The global insect repellent market generates $5.5 billion every single year, according to Grandview Research, and that number is projected to reach $8.28 billion by 2030. Mosquito repellents alone account for more than 50% of that total revenue, which means mosquitoes are a multi-billion-dollar commodity for the chemical industry. The dominant active ingredient in most commercial repellents is a synthetic chemical called DEET, which stands for N-N-diethyl metatoluamide, developed for the United States Army in 1946 to protect soldiers stationed in insect-infested combat zones. DEET was registered for commercial civilian use in 1957, and today, roughly 1/3 of the entire American population, over 100 million people, uses at least one DEET product every single year. That is 100 million people applying a synthetic laboratory chemical to their skin, their children's skin, and their clothing repeatedly throughout every mosquito season. Between the early 1980s and late 1990s, 14 cases of encephalopathy, which means brain damage, potentially linked to DEET exposure, were reported in medical literature, and 13 of the 14 cases were children under the age of 8. 3 of those children died, and the remaining 11 recovered fully, and while the direct link between DEET and those cases was never conclusively proven in peer-reviewed research, the cases were documented and published. The EPA conducted a comprehensive reassessment and concluded normal use of DEET does not present a health concern, which is fair, but here is the question nobody in the industry wants you to ask. If a $3 copper wire could dramatically reduce insect presence around your campsite, especially by eliminating every mosquito breeding site in standing water, why would anyone choose to repeatedly spray a synthetic chemical on their skin when an ancient proven alternative exists? The answer is not science, the answer is economics. Because copper cannot be consumed, you buy it once. It lasts for decades, possibly for the rest of your life, and possibly for your children's lives after you. You cannot create a copper spray that needs reapplication every 4 hours in the sun and every 8 hours in the shade. You cannot sell a copper subscription service that empties automatically and ships a replacement can to your door every month. You cannot patent a naturally occurring metal that has existed in the Earth's crust for billions of years and has been used by humans for over 10,000 years. The entire economic model of the insect repellent industry depends on one fundamental principle, and that principle is repetition. You spray the chemical, it evaporates within hours. You spray again, you buy a new can, you spray, it evaporates again, and you buy yet another can, and this cycle repeats forever. $5.5 billion a year depends on you never learning that a material your great-great-grandmother used to purify her drinking water also eliminates mosquito larvae with 100% effectiveness. Copper represents everything the chemical repellent business model opposes. It is permanent, it is natural, it is self-sustaining, it does not evaporate, it does not wash off in the rain, and it does not expire on a shelf. You cannot patent it, you cannot monopolize it, you cannot create consumer dependency on it, and what cannot create dependency cannot create recurring revenue. And what cannot create recurring revenue gets quietly buried. So copper was not banned, it was not attacked or demonized, it was simply and systematically removed from the conversation, erased from camping guides, absent from gear recommendations, missing from outdoor magazines, invisible in a market that desperately needs you to never discover it. When was the last time you saw a camping magazine recommend copper wire instead of a $40 chemical spray that lasts 3 uses? When was the last time an outdoor gear reviewer compared a $3 copper coil to a $30 battery-powered repellent device that needs $15 refill packs every 12 hours? When did any outdoor brand, any camping store, any survival expert on television tell you that the ancient Egyptians, the Romans, the Greeks, the Ayurvedic healers, and virtually every indigenous culture on Earth already solved the insect problem thousands of years before DEET was invented in a military laboratory? They did not tell you because telling you would end the sale, and ending the sale would end $5.5 billion in annual recurring revenue. Now here is the part that changes everything. Here is exactly what you do. Start with 14-gauge bare copper wire. It must be bare, not coated, not insulated, not enameled, because you need the copper surface fully exposed so the ions can release freely into the surrounding air and water. You can buy a 50-foot roll at any hardware store for $3 to $5, and in some places you can find scrap copper wire for free. Step 1. Cut 4 lengths of wire, each about 10 to 12 feet long, and create loose spirals or coils with each piece. Do not make them tight, because the more surface area exposed to air and moisture, the more copper ions are released into the environment around your campsite. Step 2. Place these 4 coils in a perimeter around your campsite, 1 on each side, roughly 8 to 10 feet from your tent or hammock, and pay special attention to placing coils near areas with standing water, damp ground, or dense vegetation, because these are the zones where mosquitoes breed and rest during daylight hours. Step 3. Take additional shorter pieces of copper wire, about 2 to 3 feet each, and wrap them loosely around your tent stakes, around the guy lines of your tarp, around the legs of your camp chairs, and around the base of your lantern stand. Every surface where insects tend to land and rest becomes a kill zone. Step 4, and this is the most scientifically proven step of the entire system. Find every puddle, container, bucket, tire track depression, or pool of still water near your campsite and drop a coil of copper wire directly into it. The peer-reviewed studies are absolutely clear on this point. Copper at concentrations below the safe drinking water threshold kills 100% of mosquito larvae in standing water within 14 days. That rain puddle near your tent, that water collected in the bottom of your cooler lid, that shallow pool at the edge of the creek. Each one is a mosquito nursery producing hundreds of new mosquitoes every week, and 1 copper coil turns each one into a graveyard. Step 5. For enhanced protection, combine copper wire with a copper mesh screen, which you can buy for less than $10 per square foot at hardware stores or online. Cut a small rectangle and hang it over your tent entrance as a door screen, or place strips of it near your cooking area where food smells attract insects. Copper mesh has been used in agriculture for decades to repel slugs, snails, and soft-bodied insects through the same oligodynamic mechanism. Step 6. Maintain your copper over time. Copper naturally develops a green patina called verdigris, which is simply copper oxide forming on the surface through natural oxidation. This patina does not reduce the antimicrobial effectiveness. In fact, some studies suggest oxidized copper actually releases ions more readily than polished copper. But if you want maximum visual brightness and effect, a quick scrub with white vinegar and table salt will restore the copper surface to its original shine in minutes. Step 7. Treat your drinking water. If you are camping near questionable water sources, coil bare copper wire inside your water container and let it sit for 6 to 8 hours. The same way the Ayurvedic tradition of Tamra Jal has been practiced for thousands of years. Studies show copper ions eliminate E. coli, salmonella, and other harmful bacteria from water stored in copper vessels overnight. Do not rely on this as your sole water purification method in high-risk areas. But as a supplementary treatment, combined with boiling or filtering, it adds a powerful extra layer of ancient proven protection. Now, let us do the math that the industry does not want you to see. A 50-foot roll of 14-gauge bare copper wire costs $3 to $5 and provides enough material to protect your campsite plus treat standing water sources. One can of DEET spray costs $8 to $15 and lasts approximately 2 camping trips before it is empty. A battery-powered mosquito repellent device like a thermocell costs $30 to $50 for the unit plus $10 to $15 refill packs that each last only 12 hours. Citronella candles cost $5 to $10 each and burn out in 8 to 12 hours of use. Over a single camping season of 10 trips, a typical camper spends between $80 and $200 on chemical repellents, foggers, candles, and refills, and every single one of those products is completely consumed and must be repurchased next season. The copper wire costs $3 to $5 once, and it works for the next 10, 20, possibly 50 years without replacement. A camper in British Columbia reported online that he wrapped copper wire around his tent stakes and along his ridgeline 3 seasons ago and has not purchased a single can of repellent since, camping 30 nights a year. Think about what we have uncovered today, the scope of what was buried from you. 4,000 years ago, Egyptian healers stored water in copper vessels to keep it pure and described the practice in the oldest medical text ever discovered by archaeologists. In 1852, Victor Burq proved that copper workers survived cholera epidemics at 7 times the rate of the general population, studying over 200,000 people across 4 countries. In 1893, Carl Nägeli discovered the oligodynamic effect and proved copper kills microorganisms on contact at concentrations so small they are nearly invisible to measurement. Modern peer-reviewed studies confirm copper kills 100% of mosquito larvae at concentrations the World Health Organization considers safe for drinking water. The EPA has registered copper as the only solid surface material on Earth proven to kill harmful bacteria, and hospitals around the world now install copper surfaces that reduce bacterial infections by 90%. And yet somehow, a $3 wire is absent from every camping store shelf, every outdoor survival guide, every gear recommendation list, and every insect protection article you have ever read in your life. That absence is not an accident, and it is not an oversight. It is a $5.5 billion business model that requires your ignorance to function. The insect repellent industry needs you to forget what the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Indian healers, and every indigenous culture on this planet already knew and practiced for millennia. But copper does not need a patent. It does not need a factory, it does not need a marketing budget or a distribution deal or a celebrity endorsement, it just needs someone to remember that it exists. And now you remember. This knowledge did not disappear in some ancient library fire. It was not lost to the ages. It is sitting right now on a shelf at your local hardware store waiting for you to pick it up for $3. The oldest insect repellent on Earth has been waiting patiently for 4,000 years for you to remember what your ancestors never forgot. The soil did not forget, the copper did not forget, and now neither will you. If this vault opens something for you today, subscribe and hit the bell because every like preserves what the industry tried to bury, and every share puts this knowledge back into hands that desperately need it. The next vault opens soon, and what we uncover next is something the outdoor gear industry has spent decades convincing you is completely impossible without their most expensive equipment. It is not. And the proof has been hiding in plain sight.